Hi, I'm hoping we're live. Let's check. I'm using a new system, so please forgive me. Hello, everybody listening later to the podcast. This is Debbie Levitt, and we are live today with a brand new podcast about the best portfolio that I've ever seen. If you are listening later to the audio only version, I want to warn you that this is definitely a visual episode. You're going to want to do the visuals for this. You might want to go to YouTube. Let's see, I'm just checking in on YouTube and making sure we are live because I'm using a new system and I apologize that it's going to be a little bit of watching the sausage being made, but hopefully once we get everything working, this will be a great new system to use. So please stick with me here. Let's see, LinkedIn. Okay, we're live. We've got a few people watching on LinkedIn. I am still logging into YouTube. So, hello, everybody. This is the podcast, and we're going to be looking today at the best portfolio that I have seen so far. Some of you know that I have been looking at portfolios for the last probably month and a half, and some of them have been very impressive. Most of them have not been very impressive. This has led me to write a few articles and to try to give people some tips and to try to say some helpful things. But ultimately, a lot of people keep asking me, well, then, what do you like in a portfolio? And it's hard to say what somebody's doing right, but I saw this guy's portfolio and I thought it was very strong. It was very impressive and it made me want to work with him. And I feel like that's what everyone's shooting for. Everyone's shooting for a portfolio that is so impressive that the person looking at it says, I want to meet them, interview them, work with them. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to walk through his portfolio project. He's not going to join us. He says he's a little shy, but he is okay with me talking about him. So I will be looking at a project in his portfolio that I haven't seen yet. So that means I'm going to be looking at this cold. I looked at other ones already. That's how I know I like this. And I'll be looking at this cold and I'm going to walk through it the way that I do for any of you who get a portfolio review. And just a reminder that I do portfolio reviews. I have a little bit of time carved out in my calendar, and you can sign up for your first one is free. Oop, my streaming says it's having a little trouble. I don't know why. The first one is free. And basically, the idea is you grab some time in my calendar, but you don't have to be there. The idea is that I am just going to watch it over, I'm going to record a video, and then I send you privately the video. So if you want your portfolio reviewed, it doesn't end up on a podcast. You don't have to worry that I'm showing it to everybody. It ends up in a private video for you. Even though the appointment system might send you a calendar reminder, you don't have to be there. I do this totally alone and I send it to you later. So again, apologies for any bumps with my new system. Also, I know that my video is a little choppy with this new system. I've put in a request to support on why the video is choppy, but let's run with it and give this a try anyway. So I'm going to clear out this screen a little bit and I'm going to share my screen and you're going to see the sausage being made a little bit, but we will take a look at this guy's portfolio. And here we go. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. And one of the first things, of course, that struck me about this portfolio was not only was it a nice homepage with a cute drawing of whoever this guy is? Now, I have not met him. I have not worked with him. I've not spoken to him. He was just someone who asked for one of my portfolio reviews, and we had some private messages on LinkedIn. So I technically don't know this guy. But those of you who are who frequent the show know I am terrible with names. So I was so happy to see this guy give me a phonetic pronunciation of his name. So I would imagine his name is pronounced Avinandan. And that gives me confidence about talking to him, where I don't have to go, oh, what? So I really like that, because that made me feel like, hey, this guy gets UX. He can put himself in someone else's shoes and say, you know what? Some people might look at my name and struggle to pronounce it. Let me help them out before they have that problem. So I kind of like that approach. That doesn't mean you have to do it. It just means I liked it. So if you scroll down his homepage, he tells you a little bit about himself. Many of you who've sent in portfolios have the same types of things. And I like to imagine that whatever you write about yourself is your promise to me. So if you say you choreograph end-to-end experiences, I'm going to look for that. If you say you are empathetic, I'm going to look for that. If you say you are creative, I'm going to look for that. He happens to have some of his career journey here. Again, this is optional. This is not why I loved his portfolio. It's really the way he shows his projects that I love. So this is his personal career journey. So he is not a junior. He is somebody who has been working for a few years, and he's got some degrees, and he's working on another degree. So I would not think of him as a junior. And now he's got his project. He told me it's okay to share Carvel with you guys. So I'm going to show you the Carvel thing. Now, I haven't looked through Carvel yet, so it's my first time seeing it. It's your first time seeing it. I'm going to walk through and show you how I look at a portfolio, and what I like and what I don't like. Now, reimagining the online cake ordering experience. Now, if you've never heard of Carvel, then you already know what this project is about. You can order cakes online, and he's going to be reimagining that. So, sounds good. And his role here is research and design. That's what he's telling me. So, when I look at portfolios, I'm looking at two key things, no matter what level you're at. I'm looking at your UX process and approach to make sure that it looks really solid, and that if you were to work for me or with me, if I'm pretending I'm a hiring manager, that I think you can do the job. And then I also look at the storytelling. How did you tell me about the project you did? And did you understand what information I was likely to want to see to understand what you did? Now, you can see from his scroll bar that this is a very long page. Now, we know that there are some people who are looking to hire UX people, and they just want to see a few pretty pictures, a few wireframes, some sticky notes on a wall, and that's it. And someone would come in and say, this is going to be too long. But I think that once you're working your way up to more senior roles, there are people who really want to judge you by the depth and quality of your work, and it'll be important to have more information there. This is not a guy who is selling himself on pretty pictures. So, I'll show you how I feel about the balance of information, but let's just get started and see what he says. So he introduces you to who Carvel is, and I happen to know who they are because I grew up in New York, where Carvel had lots of ice cream stores. So this is a brand that's familiar to me, but if it's not familiar to you, he tells you who they are. And I know this is a real company, an 85-year-old ice cream franchise, in-store and online cake ordering. This project is aimed at understanding. Now, I tell people, read your portfolio out loud in case you miss a word. I'm assuming that we're missing the word is here. This project is aimed at understanding the potential caveats in Carvel's online platform and providing actionable design suggestions. So I'm not sure if he will make changes to the design or just suggestions, but let's see what he did. Next, he says this was part of coursework for his class at Georgia Tech, and he's on a team with multiple students. Now, those of you who've had a portfolio review with me know that team projects, especially from schools, are not my favorite. It can be very hard for me to tell, what did you do that was good that I should give you credit for, and what did you not do that someone else did that was good or bad, that you shouldn't get credit or blame for. And a quick note for people watching live, please leave comments and questions in LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm going to walk through this portfolio, which will probably take me about 15 minutes, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take a look at the comments and questions. So go ahead and write stuff as we go, and I'll take a look at it later. So he had 4 students on. This is a master's degree program, and looks like maybe they spent about 4 months on it. So he says that his contributions, and again, this is great for the people who are doing school projects and putting them in a portfolio. This is pretty clear about what his role is, because very often the portfolios I see, especially people right out of trade schools and boot camps, are like, I was on a team with 4 people, I did some research. Okay. Well, that doesn't tell me enough. So, planned and conducted 3 research methods: competitive UX, think aloud, and cognitive walkthroughs, led the brainstorming sessions for ideation, 2 major task flows. So, again, we can read this and we can say, okay, I get a feeling for what role this guy played in the team. I still may or may not be sure exactly which work was his, but I can get a good sense of this. Tools, okay, I don't get too picky about tools, that's fine. So, the ask: optimize the cake ordering experience. So he's got a lot of text here, and some people might say, I think he should have less text here. I don't want to read that much. And I can agree there. I know that in general, I'm looking for more information on what he did, how he did it, how he chose what he did, what he learned from the research, things like that. So let's see if any of this is stuff that maybe could be edited down. The client suspected the online cake ordering platform didn't provide an optimal user experience. Only a few franchises were using the platform and many were opting out. Okay, that's definitely some interesting information. I think that this is the kind of text that I probably would skip reading because it just seems like a lot of blah, 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 but it is interesting. So I wonder if this could be presented as bullet points that are more bang, bang, bang. Decline in online cake sales is a problem for the company because that's their revenue. Okay, got it. We were asked to focus on a millennial user group for the problem. Okay, so that gives you a little bit of the scope of what he's doing, and he tells you a little bit about the way it was, and he's got some screenshots of how it looked, and we can, those of us who've worked in UX a while, can see why this is not potentially the greatest online ordering system. Okay, moving on. So his approach. So now he has this module here where he gives you kind of a general approach to this project, that they're going to do research to determine the pain points, continual research to learn users' needs and desires, so probably habits and tasks, some ideation on how this can be improved and being strategic about it, design, test, prototyping. So I like this. This seems like a really nice traditional approach to UX. It's not anything nouveau or weird or the short version or let's just all get in a room for a day and put sticky notes on a wall. So I like where he's going with this. So let's take a look. Documentation mining. Google Analytics reports say there's a higher bounce rate in the mobile web version than the desktop version. Sales were higher on the desktop site. In-store sales not comparable. Competitive UX benchmarking. So colors might be a little bit tough here for the colorblind. If you are going to do these things in your projects, just remember not everyone can parse red from green. So try to pick a different color palette. You can always do red, yellow, blue, but remember the colorblind. So they're looking at competitors, and I guess these are kind of assessments of how they assessed the other competitors. So this is very general and high level, but check out what he's got here. And we already know he's got a long page, but imagine you're looking at this and you're saying, I'm really thinking about hiring this guy as some sort of researcher. I wonder what he really does when it comes to UX benchmarking. So when I click read more, I get this overlay. Now the overlay is a little funky. It's scrollable and it's a little bit big, and I don't know how this looks on a phone, but I really liked the way that he had these kind of like, it's way more than a side note. It's really a whole sub thing. For someone like me who says, I really want to deeply assess this person's skills and abilities before I decide to interview him. Obviously, if I bring him in for an interview, I can ask him to walk through this piece or tell me a story. But here, I can see how this guy tells a story, and I can see that he realized not everyone's going to be interested in this, but some people might, and that's why I'm going to include it. So here, he's just going deeper on this stuff. So whether you use some sort of pop up or modal, or whether you use an accordion to kind of show and hide additional stuff. I like his style. And again, I'm showing you his portfolio because it's even better than mine. So I really want someone to see something that I liked, even though some will look at this and say, oh man, too many words, too long page. Sure, but you can adapt a lot of what he's doing right for what you're doing and your style. So, Think Aloud user testing. We conducted Think Aloud user testing with participants, scenario driven. Of course, that's the right way to do it. Identified major pain points, loss of data in the transition from Carvel to the platform, inconsistency in the design, and complexity in reviewing the cake order, and text heavy. So, we can learn more. So, what else does he have to say about this? I don't know. Now he's giving me these details. Again, those of you who have had me review your portfolio before, you've probably heard me say, don't just tell me you did a thing. Don't just tell me you did Think Aloud user research or testing. I really want to know, who did you talk to? What were the tasks you gave them? What did you learn? Because when you just tell me, I learned a thing, sometimes I wonder if you asked biased or crappy questions. So I really like that. If I want to see more about his process and his depth, I have that opportunity with these kind of additional read more. So here's a couple of kind of bullet points that he's going to approach. More mobile first, aligning online and in store, integrate cake ordering experience, simplify customization, and allow for glanceability. Now, when people do this in their portfolios, and I see this a lot, especially from school projects where they've got project goals, I treat that as a promise to me. I want to see that by the end of this portfolio project, you have achieved some or all of these. Because sometimes I look at portfolios and someone says, well, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then they end up doing totally different things. And I'm like, well, what happened? What happened to your own goals that you supposedly found through good research? So he's got some goals here, but he's still doing continued research, which, of course, I like if I really wanted to assess this guy, especially since he is definitely more higher level. He's not a junior. So, semi structured interviews to better understand this. Cake, and then read more. What can we learn about this? We recruited 6 participants from our peer group, so that's probably schoolmates, and 2 bakery experts in Kroger's, and learned more about how people order cakes. And of course, we have to have a picture of Post-its on a wall, or it's not a UX portfolio. But again, I'm kind of glossing over this a little bit, but if I wanted to take the time to read this, I would be able to do that. Or if I were a hiring manager, I could glance at this and say, wow, this guy is thorough and he understands that some people really want these details and understands that other people don't want these details. And then he's got kind of a short version of his affinity mapping, which we had that other photo of. And now he's got some bullet points. So that's nice and glanceable for people who don't like to read chunky paragraphs. And these are his main insights. Users would visit a cake ordering platform occasionally. Most prefer to make simple customizations. Looks of the cake was a significant driver. Clear cake pricing. So these are nice learnings that he got. And I feel like I can trust how he got them. Very often when I see portfolios, people are like, yeah, I did some interviews. I don't know with whom or what they asked. Yeah, I've put some Post-its on a wall. I don't know why. And I came to these conclusions. And I feel like I'm not sure if I can trust their process. And that doesn't impress me. Remember, as I've been talking about in my articles, you want to impress me. Even if you're junior level, even if you just graduated a boot camp, you've got to have something that says, Debbie, I can do the job. Debbie, you want to take a chance on me. You want to bring me into your company. I can do this stuff, even if it's at a junior level. And again, this guy is not. So for first-time users, focus on ease of use, provide efficient photorealistic imagery for the cakes, simple intuitive flow. Yes, these are all great ideas and super UX focused. I've seen a couple of portfolios where people say, yeah, it's really important to have nice graphic design for the pages. And I say, okay, that is, but I really want to see you focused on UX and usability. And sure, visual design is part of that, but let's talk about solving people's problems. So now he's taking a look at the users and he's going into, it looks like personas and journey maps. Now, again, not only do these look really great, and I can click on them and zoom in on them so I can take a look at what it is. Now, what I like about these is that they're not heavily focused on demographics. Sometimes I see personas and it's all, and he's married and he listens to metal music and he lives alone. I'm just like, how does that help you design? Here we're really focused on goals, needs, pain points, and usually I'll call these like motivations or habits, and he's saying personality. So I like that I can zoom in. Some of you showed me portfolios where I couldn't zoom in and I couldn't read anything. And of course, we also have a journey map. Now, again, watch out for color coding because if someone is red-green colorblind, that's not going to jump out to them. So think about different color schemes that you can use or using icons. But in general, I like the look of his journey map. I feel like I can trust that this was based in real research and information rather than guessing and assuming or rushing through it. So I feel like I can trust that this guy has a good research process. And even if his personas didn't totally match the way I tend to do them, or even if his journey map didn't match the way I tend to do them, that's just a stylistic difference, and I would not take points away, as we say. So, how do we focus on cake ordering? Design goals, consistent, learnable, easy to use, engaging. So I hope that by the end of this, he shows me something that is consistent, learnable, easy to use, and engaging. That's what he promised me. So he's going to do a few iterations of designing and testing. I'm happy to see that. I did see some portfolios where there was no testing. I did see some portfolios where there was designing, there was testing. Testing showed that everything was a freaking disaster. The person just changed a couple of visual things and tested again, and it was still a disaster. And it just made it seem like that was a person who could not admit that the design was poor or something else was going wrong. So I like that he's going to do a few iterations and hopefully we'll see what he learns along the way. So iteration 1, this is a little hard for me to look at. I can try to zoom in on this, but it's still a little hard for me to see. I do happen to know enough about Carvel to tell you that this whale is a cake. Right, everybody? Fudgy the whale, am I right? It's a little hard for me to completely judge the interaction design being done here because I'm not too sure what I'm looking at. I don't know if these are screens in order. I don't know if this is one flow, multiple flows. I don't know if these are variations in someone's path. So I'm not totally sure what I'm looking at here. But I will say that in general, the wireframes look clean. They look appropriate to mobile. I have seen a lot of stuff that is not appropriate to mobile. These also look appropriately medium fidelity. He's not worried too much about some of the branding, some of the navigation. He's just saying, here's how people are going to move through their tasks. So even though I can't see this, now he's got what I assume to be a video. A lot of times, honestly, I don't watch the videos. So just pretend I'm a hiring manager. My day is packed with meetings. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to interview you or not. I'm not downloading PDFs. I'm not watching videos. But this might be a great video and worth watching. Let's just pretend I didn't watch it. So we facilitated discovery. We did a new store locator, pre-made flow, and visualize your cake. Okay, so how did the test go? We conducted cognitive walkthrough with 4 users, best for evaluating learnability of a system. In general, cognitive walkthrough is done by experts. We modified the method to involve users. These walkthrough sessions. Insights were, so I like that he's got key bullet points. Users would have to scroll considerably to browse all the cakes. Users could get disoriented due to lack of cakeability until they selected a store. Great point. Some stores might sell different cakes and that might be confusing. Going through customization was confusing and redundant. And grouping custom. So it sounds like he's being honest that his first set of designs had some flaws, and I like that. And I can read more to see what he found and what he did. And this is a lot of information, and not everybody will want to read this. But if I really wanted to assess, can this guy do his thing, I would look at this. Now, again, this is a group project, and you're hoping that the guy you're interviewing is the genius of the group. But in a sense, even though I don't totally know which things this guy did and he didn't do, this would still be enough to make me say, I want to meet him. I want to interview him. And to me, that's all your portfolio has to do. It's like online dating. You don't have to get married that minute, but you want someone to look at your online dating portfolio and say, I think I want to meet that person. So now here's another one. Now, already know I can't really zoom in on this, so I have to just assume what's going on here, or I could watch this video, but I want to hear him tell the story, so I'm going to keep reading. Major changes were. Okay, so I like that. He's telling you, look, we learned a lot from our first round of testing. These were the things that we changed to improve it, and we did another set of testing, and we learned more. Categories were confusing, or filters rather were confusing. Experts indicated showing the availability of product cards. Okay, selecting of size. You can also see, if you read through this, you can also see from the way this guy writes that it's just really intelligent, it's unemotional, it's never about him. It's always about the project, the users, the flow, the experience. And I like that as well because I saw a lot of portfolios where people would talk about, then we did testing. I learned a lot in testing. I found it really challenging. I learned some new things. And I'm like, this is not an eighth grade book report. So I think it's more professional to come up with something that feels and sounds more like this. I tell people, imagine that your portfolio project is you giving a presentation at your job about a project you did. What are the highly professional things you would say, and what are the kind of weird things that you would leave out? So again, we can learn lots more about what he did, which is great if I want to. Now, in my case, I would already want to meet this guy. He's totally winning, so that's great. But let's see what else he talks about here. So here's more visual design, and I would be a little bit concerned about these colors in that I feel like they might not be colorblind friendly. But if that is this company's brand, it's hard for you or me to come in and be like, hey, your brand colors don't meet accessibility standards. So you just got to kind of run with it and choose ways to use those colors so that the colorblind can still make sense of what's going on. So let's see, design for learnability and ease of use. So isn't it great that he didn't just say, I designed things, or I'll see very often, here are my full fidelity or high fidelity wireframes. He's reminding us what he's doing and why. How can I make this learnable and ease of use? And then he's got like little annotations where he's pointing out to you what he and his team have done to achieve some of those original goals that they were setting out to do. And again, I've never seen this portfolio project before right now. I'm looking at it totally cold, and these are just my natural impressions of the good and the bad. 2 columns to reduce vertical scrolling versus having just one cake at a time. Sure, makes sense. That's pretty common. Uh, Treating things as cards, super. So let's see, explore cakes without selecting a store. That was a problem. So I'm not reading this right now. We're at the point where there's a lot of words here. And again, I already dig this guy and would want to meet him. But just take a look at how he approaches these things and the way he tells the story of what he did. So if you're feeling what I'm feeling, you too would get the feeling that this guy knows what he's doing and he's good at the storytelling side of it. Now, again, you could say his storytelling is too much. There's a lot of sentences and paragraphs here that he could cut down. He probably could, but I would still say that even if I choose to not read everything, I can still glance at things and see his ability to tell a story. I can see him put up a screen like this and say, yep, this guy knows how to tell a clear story to himself, to his teammates, to engineers. I trust that this guy is going to do a lot of right things. And we've got some other screens here. Fantastic. Design for engagement. So again, he reminds you of another goal that the project had. He's put some animations here to show you how people will use it. And I think that's really neat. The idea that if you choose M&Ms or generic M&Ms on the cake, there's going to be an animation of them falling on the cake. That's got a nice fun engagement angle to it. And that's pretty much the end. So, and again, I'm not, learnings. Okay. And again, I usually don't read the learnings since sometimes it's a little bit about yourself, I learned this and I was happy with this. But I can see that here he doesn't have an I, or he's got one I, but he doesn't have too much I and me. And again, I like that because I feel like UX has to be low ego action heroes. And I feel like when I look at this portfolio, this guy is a low ego action hero. He's gonna get it done. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, put the camera back on me, and I'm going to check YouTube and LinkedIn for questions and comments. And if we need to flip back to this, we will. But for now, I will put it back on me, and you're watching the sausage being made in my new system. So let's take a look at any comments or questions. I don't see anything in YouTube. And let's see what we've got in LinkedIn. Let's see. Some people said sound is cutting out. I'm sorry about that, guys. I didn't know. I am trying a new system, and I'm sorry if the sound was cutting out here and there. I did not know. I don't have anything that tells me that. Can you guys hear me now? Because we've got 19 people live in 20 people live in LinkedIn. And let's see, anybody in YouTube? 5 in YouTube. So again, I was using a new system today, guys. I'm sorry if there were some blips. My Wi-Fi is looking very strong, so I don't think it's that. Any comments or questions? Anybody, sorry, we are still broadcasting. I just stopped talking for a moment and just asking if anybody has any comments or questions that they have about the portfolio and how I interpret the portfolio, and what I look for in a portfolio, or what this person chose to put in it. Of course, I can't speak for him, but I can try to speak to some of my thoughts and ideas. And I'm sorry again if people are having some trouble with the sound. According to my system, the sound looks good. I'll have to listen to this later and see what happened. And I might have to ask the company for some tech support. Any comments or questions? Okay. YouTube is saying audio on YouTube was fine. Audio on YouTube was fine the whole time? Okay. So I don't know why LinkedIn had some audio problems, but I can certainly investigate that. If audio on YouTube was fine, then hopefully the archive of this will be good sounding. We can check on that later. Any comments or questions about portfolios, portfolio presentation, portfolio choices, um, uh, and anything. You've got me. We're taking questions right now. So if anybody has any questions, please ask them right now. We are about 30 seconds delayed. Usually, whatever I say kind of shows up on LinkedIn about 30 seconds later. So if you have a question, I promise I will see it and answer it as soon as I can. If there aren't any questions, I will wrap this up. I thought there might be a lot of questions because of, let's see, LinkedIn still choppy and buffering at times. I'm just getting a sign. Thank you to the sign holder. So I'm not too sure why LinkedIn is being very choppy, but of course, I will look into this. So, if you have any questions on this portfolio, you can always find me later through YouTube or LinkedIn and let me know your questions. Again, people who are listening to the podcast version, it's going to be a little hard for you to make sense of this episode. I do recommend you tracking down the archive of this on YouTube, which will have my screen share and my video. And our YouTube channel is youtube.com/C, the letter C for channel, Delta CX, all one word. So, podcast listeners, this was probably a little bit too weird as audio only. Please join us in YouTube for the video version. Um, LinkedIn does seem very choppy and buffering. I'm not too sure why, but YouTube, I guess, has been smooth. Okay, we've got a question from YouTube. It says, tips for UX research portfolio. Always a great question. And we've got another question from Kathy after that. So, Hope number one light in YouTube says tips for UX research portfolio. Similar to the portfolio project that I just walked through, if you are doing research, I expect to see good details of that research. The way that I think Avi's portfolio works is really great in that it's got lots of detail, but then it also has areas where you can kind of open up additional information. So for a researcher, I expect to see a lot of the type of detail that he included, where I want to know who you interviewed or observed, how many were there, where did you find these people, what were some of the key questions you asked, and what did you learn? And that way I can try to see, do you ask skewed questions or things like that. When well, what's the word I'm looking for? So if you're not doing architecture or interaction design, that's fine. It can just be a research portfolio. But the key thing is you need to impress a hiring manager who may or may not be like me, and you want to make sure you've got enough details in there, either available right there or as a kind of call out to show me you know what to do, you take the right approaches, you keep it about the project and the customer, and it's not an ego thing. So, Hope One Light, I hope that helps. Ask a follow up question if you need more help there. Now, let's also ask Kathy's got a question. Hello, Kathy. Would you suggest talking about the team, size of the team, roles, their names you worked with at the very beginning of the portfolio piece? Only if that's going to help anybody later. If you tell me the team had A and B and C and D and me, Kathy, and I did this and they did this and they did this and they did this and they did this, it can give me a little bit of an idea of who to credit and who to blame, especially where I see portfolios where I'm hoping to learn a lot about what you did, and it turns out what you did on the project was very minimal. So I once saw a portfolio and someone had said their involvement in the project was like note taking during interviews and some of the visual design. And my thought was, well, then this portfolio project kind of doesn't need to be here, because if you just did note taking during the interviews and you just did the visual design, none of this research or architecture or other things are yours. So I think it can help to say people did this, people did that. In the portfolio we just looked at, he didn't talk about the other teammates. He tried to focus on what he had done. But also that would come up if he got the interview, it could come up there too, like, show me in this portfolio project which things you were most directly involved in and which things you weren't. So I think you can talk about that a little bit, but I wouldn't go too deeply into it. Like, I don't care about other people's backgrounds. My question is whether or not I want to interview you. So it's okay for you to give me a little bit about that and shift the focus to you. Kathy, Hope, other people in YouTube, if you have follow up questions, please ask them. I'm monitoring the chat. Unfortunately, LinkedIn appears to have stopped my video. That's strange. So I'm assuming there must be a problem with LinkedIn today, because my system is telling me that I'm broadcasting to LinkedIn, and I don't know what happened there. Am I still broadcasting to YouTube? Okay. Caleb says he has a question. Hello, Caleb. I missed a lot of the live session because LinkedIn was lagging. I'm sorry about that, Caleb. I don't know what happened there, but it will be archived on YouTube so everybody can watch it here later, though obviously we're missing the interactive element that we normally love on these podcasts. What are the qualities of a good product design portfolio? That's a good question to talk about overviews. And again, Caleb, if you watch the archive later, and this will be archived as soon as I stop streaming, so it'll really be available in the next, say, half hour, you'll get the idea from that. But mostly, I would say there are two types of audiences for a UX portfolio. One are the people who don't totally get UX, whether that's a researcher or it's a strange company or it's a hiring manager who manages UX but isn't good at it. They like to see lots of pretty pictures. They want to see pictures of post-its on a wall. They want to see sketches and screens and things like that. And they want to see less information. But then you've got someone like me who wants to see a lot more detail because I'm trying to figure out if you have the ability to do the work at a strong level. I want to make sure that you really know what you're doing and that you've got good process and approach. So I would say that make sure that even if you don't want to write out a lot about your process and shoot for bullet points where you can rather than paragraphs, you can still use a technique like what we saw in Avi's portfolio, which was where he gave you some information about one step of his process, and then he had this read more link, which allowed you to either open an accordion or pop up a window where people who do want to know more details, like me, would be able to see those details. So you can end up having one portfolio that ends up satisfying two different audiences. One audience might be a recruiter or an HR person who isn't really knowledgeable about UX or product design, but is just eyeballing this and wants to make sure that you can generally do this before passing you on to a hiring manager. And then, of course, the other might be the hiring manager who hopefully knows about UX and is looking to make sure that that you really know what you're doing. So that would be my suggestions there. Those are general suggestions, but I think if you can watch back the portfolio, it'll make a lot more sense because you'll see it. But Caleb, Kathy, Hope, ask if you have any other follow-up questions. I'm going to hang out here a little bit more, especially since it looks like the feed died over on LinkedIn. So we're live on YouTube and happy to take questions here. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel while you guys are here. That's YouTube. Just search for Delta CX on YouTube. Also, just a reminder to people that I do portfolio reviews. I do your first one for free. If you want a whole bunch of them, I might charge you for my time. But the first one is free, and the URL is on the screen for those listening. It is deltacx.link. That's my URL shortener. deltacx.link/portfolio dash review. And that'll take you into my calendar system where you can pick a time. And again, you don't end up in an appointment with me. It just ends up as a reminder on my calendar to do kind of what I just did with Avi's portfolio and walk through it on a video, except it doesn't go out to the public. I save the video and I send it to you privately. So don't worry, this is not going to be exposed in a podcast. If you want a portfolio review, I got specific permission from Avi to show his portfolio and to talk about it and to talk about things I liked or didn't like. So that is not the experience that you will have if you sign up for my free portfolio review. So any other questions, please ask them. Again, thanks to the 8 people watching on YouTube right now. Apologies to those who were trying to watch on LinkedIn before. We had a great turnout, but I could see that the feed was really a mess, and I promise I will work to troubleshoot that. Again, I apologize that my video is a little choppy today because I'm trying out a new system and the video is a little bit funky. Caleb says, "You are amazing. I've been reading your articles. It's changed my approach." Thanks, Caleb. Thank you so much. And keep spreading the word. Share them out. Kathy says, "Right now I'm asking other designers to review my portfolio. Is this appropriate, or should I be asking design recruiters and hiring managers for feedback?" Kathy, I think that this is the kind of thing where it's not a bad thing to ask other designers to review your portfolio, but I do find that depending upon who these people are in your life, they might just be very polite. I've had a lot of people who have come to me for a portfolio review say, "Look, I've read your stuff on LinkedIn. I know you can be brutally honest, if not a little bit tough sometimes. I need that. I need to know what's wrong with my portfolio because I'm not getting the interviews that I want." My concern is that if you show your portfolio to people who think of you as a friend or a cousin, they might not want to say, "Hey, Kathy, this kind of stinks. You really didn't do the right thing, or you didn't tell me a good story." I think design recruiters and hiring managers can be great, but just remember, everyone's going to tell you something different. So when I tell people, "Yeah, I love to see those details about how you did that," and that's why I love Avi's portfolio so much, you're going to have a recruiter and other people saying, "People don't want those details. They don't make time to read it. Leave it out." Now, again, I say split the difference. You can always have short descriptions of a step of your project, and then you can have that read more thing that you saw Avi doing, and that way you can satisfy both groups. So I would say don't take too much advice from someone who says make everything really long and detailed, or make everything short and pretty pictures. You kind of have to do both of these in today's world. I hope that helps. Caleb says, "What are your suggestions on designers chasing job titles?" Caleb, what do you mean by that? Tell me a little bit more. I know we're about 20 seconds delayed, but tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that. Do you mean people who go for senior jobs when they're not really a senior yet, but they're hoping to just bump up their title or level? Tell me a little bit more about what you mean there. Ah, quick beverage break. And again, I feel so badly for the people we accidentally abandoned on LinkedIn. My system is saying that I am live on LinkedIn, and clearly I am not. So I apologize there, everybody. So Caleb, follow up with me and tell me what you mean by that. And anybody else who's watching, we've got 10 people on YouTube right now. Please hit that subscribe button and join me here. You will be notified when I go live here. And honestly, sometimes this is a little bit better than LinkedIn. I love seeing you guys on LinkedIn, but I do find that YouTube has less of a lag and a little bit better quality video. So, Caleb, follow up to what you said. Anyone? Hello. Well, while we wait for Caleb to explain that, just a reminder that everybody can visit me at deltacx.com and learn more about what the world is about. I've got the Delta CX book. I do lots of speaking and training, and I've got lots of things up there that have to do with the Delta CX model. I just put up a new model a couple of days ago. This is the Empathy Knowledge Action Model, and I encourage everybody to go check it out. And what else? Follow us on Medium. That's another one, too. Caleb hasn't responded, so I don't know if he fell off the planet or if my stream died again. Designers chasing job titles. He could also mean, what about people who aren't UX designers trying to add UX to their job title and just make more money without doing anything different? I don't really know what he's asking, so I'm having trouble answering that one. But, he says sometimes designers call themselves design lead, but they don't get it. Well, again, even that could use a little bit more clarification, because is it that they don't understand being a lead, or they call themselves lead but they weren't a lead? I looked at a portfolio the other day, yesterday. Well, I half looked at it, but that's another story. And on the portfolio, the guy had described himself as senior UX designer or something like that. And then I followed his link to LinkedIn. And when I looked at his current job title, it was UX designer. And that was appropriate because he'd had the job, I think, 3 years. So he probably was what we would call mid level. Yet on his resume, on his portfolio site, he had put senior. And I told him that it's really important to be more consistent and be more honest, that you are not at the senior level yet. You know, if you did General Assembly a few years ago and you've spent 2 or 3 years at your first job, I wouldn't say you're a senior yet. As Caleb might say, you're not a lead yet. If you are the only UX person on a project or on a team, that doesn't necessarily make you the lead. I know you feel like the lead, but remember that lead is a title with respect to seniority. So typically the titles in UX are junior or associate. Then nothing at the beginning. It's just mid-level is like UX designer, UX architect, something like that. Then you have senior. Some companies do principal above senior. Some companies do lead. I worked at a company that did principal and then lead. So you had all of these levels. And then after that, you usually end up in manager or director land. So I wouldn't I wouldn't say call yourself a lead if you are not at that like 8 years of experience level. Because if you end up in a job interview with me, I'm going to ask you, what made you the lead designer? And normally, lead designer is a job that is some worker bee, but highly strategic, maybe 50-50. So, yes, you're doing some work, but you're also strategizing, you're mentoring juniors, you're educating others about UX. There are other things you might be leading. And so, if you say lead, and then I interview you and I say, what made you a leader? And you're like, well, I was the only one on the project. That's not really enough. Caleb, am I in the ballpark for what you're asking? I'm hoping you'll write a follow up so I can see if I'm addressing what you wanted to know more about. We've got 7 people still in YouTube. So, again, apologies to the LinkedIn people who the stream died. I'll have to do more testing of the new system and see if it's the system or if LinkedIn was just having a bad day. I'm not sure if it's the system because we're still live on YouTube. But we've got a few more minutes left. So if you guys want to write any follow up questions or if you want to write a fresh question, I am happy to take those questions. And again, sorry about my video being choppy. That is just seems to be something happening with my new system that I haven't worked out yet. The new system is very complex. Any additional questions? I'll give you guys another minute or so. Caleb says, you answered it correctly. I do this at times. Yeah, and the reality is, if someone like me is going to figure it out, will that change my impression of you? Will it change my impression of you that you called yourself a lead or a leader and you weren't? And I might either, if you're really awesome, I might forgive you and say, well, this guy's just trying a little too hard and I figured him out. But if I don't feel that way, I might say, is this guy a little bit of a liar or a truth stretcher? Am I going to have a problem with him at work where he is stretching the truth, where he thinks he's more of a leader or a higher role than he is? And are we going to have a power problem with this guy? So I would say just be careful about assigning yourself a title that's higher than the level you are at, especially where you're going to have a savvy hiring manager who's going to figure it out. Kathy says, would you recommend taking the time to explain your product at the beginning of the portfolio? I work on a more technical product. Infrastructure as code, so that's why I ask. Kathy, I do, but I wouldn't do more than a short paragraph. Like, can you give me the 3-sentence version? If I look back at Avi's portfolio, let's look back again at how he explained Carvel ice cream stores to people who'd never heard of them. He's got 1, 2, 3 sentences. Can you explain this in 3 sentences? He wrote, Carvel is an 85-year-old ice cream franchise that provides premium soft serve ice cream and ice cream cakes and is one of the few in the industry that offers customized cakes. Its cake sales account for a majority of the business. It supports both in-store and online cake ordering. This project aimed at understanding the potential caveats in Carvel's online platform by leveraging multiple research methods and accordingly providing actionable design suggestions to improve its online cake ordering experience. So that's 4 sentences, and that gives me a really good idea of who this company was and what this guy was kind of charged to do, what the project was, and a couple of the key goals. He managed to say all that in 2 long sentences and 2 short sentences. So I do think you should explain it. Actually, the portfolio that had a bit of a false start yesterday was because I couldn't tell what the company did. I couldn't tell what the company did. I couldn't tell what the project was. And where the guy did try to explain it to me, he had copied and pasted marketing speak from the website. So it was like, oh, we have an intrinsic, holistic wood. And I was like, what? I can't tell what's going on here. Can you tell me in plain language what this company does and what this project is, and whether it's a redesign or fix of something that exists, or if it is something really fresh and new that doesn't exist? And so I had to kind of give up on that portfolio review because I could not tell what was going on. So Kathy, I think a few sentences, don't get too long with it. I think that would work. Our good friend Plexus is back. He says, I removed lead or senior from all my resume titles when I apply for a job. I'd figured I'd just let my resume define that to the reader. I went with hybrid, UX, UI, product designer, covered the bases, seemed to work. Now, of course, Plexus has a unique story because he was looking for a job for quite a long time and he eventually got one. So I would imagine he probably tried a lot of different things to figure out what would help tell his story best. And in his case, removing those levels helped. I do have those levels on my resume, but if you look at my resume, it really jumps around. I was a senior, and then I was a principal, and then I was a senior again, and then I was a director, and then I was a senior again, and so I don't get too caught up in my own titles, and I don't worry that they bounced around to different levels, and I hope that people who look at that will feel that that shows humility. That sure, I've been lead or principal or whatever, but I also don't mind being a senior and doing senior work for senior pay. So I think that titles can sometimes not matter, can sometimes tell a story, and it's going to be different for everybody. So I'm glad that that worked for Plexus. Caleb, don't chase the title too much because a lot of us will figure it out, and that could potentially work against you. Guys, we only have a few minutes left. I try to keep these to an hour. So if anybody has any last questions about portfolios, these have been some great questions. Let me know what they are. We'll fit these in. Otherwise, we will wrap it up and I will work on troubleshooting my system. Which means, Deb, can you please come to Canada for a meetup? Caleb, I'm going to be in both Calgary and Toronto in May. Are you in either of those cities? I'm going to be in Seattle in early August, and I'm asking some people in Vancouver if they can find a way to bring me in. So if you know anybody at a UX meetup, please tell them to contact me through deltacx.com or through LinkedIn and have me over for a meetup. I'm always happy to talk to UX groups and stuff like that, so let me know. So, yes, I will be in Canada in May. Let's make something work. Caleb, where are you? Any other thoughts or questions before we wrap this up? While I wait for your last questions, programming notes. You guys know I love to end with programming notes. Don't forget that this week is a super exciting week in the world of Delta CX. We have a mountain of live streams to do, which means I really got to figure out my system. Even if I have to go back to the old system, I promise we will get this working. Tomorrow is live office hours. Ask me anything that I will be doing at around 6 or 6:15 p.m. Italy time. So please adjust that for where you live. I'm in Italy. Wednesday, live stream improv comedy. You know you want to be silly. We are going to do live improv comedy. It's anonymous, and you also don't need a Mural account. It's going to be on Mural, and we are going to do a lean UX canvas. And I play the role of a very bad facilitator. So we're there to be silly, not to take it seriously. And Thursday will be a great live podcast, probably using the old system just to make sure it's working. And we're going to be joined by two hiring managers who have a few things to say about some of the resumes and portfolios they've been seeing from boot camp graduates. That doesn't mean that all boot camp graduates are bad or in trouble, but it does mean that there are some patterns there. Waterloo, Canada. Would have to Google map that, not too sure. Real quick, I saw that Avi has a timeline on his portfolio. What are your thoughts on this? Kathy, if you're talking about the timeline Avi put on his homepage of his portfolio, I thought that that was a nice visual way to tell some of the story of his career path. It does work because his career path was not 25 years like mine is. So let me go back to his homepage, even though I'm not sharing my screen. You guys can go back to it. His starts July 2011, and he takes it through his expected master's degree graduation in 2021. So I think that it's a nice timeline, but it's extremely general. especially since it seems like he's done some agency work. And I know when you work at an agency, you get all kinds of things. I liked that his timeline was just very glanceable, and it just helped me know quite generally his education, when he's worked at different places, and that he's working on his education now. So I think a timeline like that is totally optional. If you didn't have it, that would be totally fine. But since he did have it, it was a nice little touch. So armed with that, we are running up to an hour. I'll be winding down, but again, we've got lots of live streaming happening this week. I hope you guys will join in for all of it. As usual, it is free and unsponsored and no ads and not monetized. And I'm just happy to see you guys join in. So please do join in. Of course, follow me on LinkedIn at Debbie Levitt. Oh, thank you, Kathy. Good to see you here. And deltacx.com, where you can get more information, and just keep showing the love, and I will see you guys soon. And now I'm going to try to end this stream and see what went wrong. And Caleb says, thank you, Delta. Well, you can call me Delta CX, but I am your friend, Debbie Levitt. And with that, I say good night, everybody. Bye.